V'lo sechalelu Hashem kodshi v'nikdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael. Hidden away in the middle of Parshas Emor is this single, really bombshell pasuk, which is after all the halachos of the Kohanim and the first part of the parsha, but it really is fascinating that it's, in a sense, an introductory pasuk to the whole second part of Emor, which is Eile Moedei Hashem Asher Tikro Osam Mikroi Kodesh, the whole list of the annual cycle of Shabbos and Chagim and Moedim throughout the whole year. What is it about this pasuk which commands our attention at such a deep level? And I'd like to speak about that for a few minutes. First of all, it's interesting to take a Gemara in Brachos Kaf Beis, which learns from here an important halacha which is relevant to us 365 days a year. It says, "V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael," that if you want to engage in high-level kedusha, and the Chazal understand this to be connected to certain types of tefillot. There are some tefillot which are simply saying Tehillim, which are simply asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for a blessing. These are personal bakashot. But then there is, on a higher level, what are referred to in halacha as devorim shebikdusha. There are certain moments of tefillah which are simply a moment of chibur, a moment of connecting us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For that moment, we're connected to the infinite. And that is tefillah such as Kaddish, Kedusha, Baruch Hu, and Kriyas HaTorah. These are all devorim shebikdusha, and for them you need a minyan. And therefore the pasuk reads as follows: "V'nikdashti." If you want to really engage in that higher level of kedusha, it can only be b'soch b'nei Yisrael. When you're in the midst of Klal Yisrael, you can't attain the higher levels of kedusha as an individual. You have to be connected to Am Yisrael, concerned about Am Yisrael, interacting with Am Yisrael, and that is the mitzvah of the tzibur, the mitzvah of the minyan, and v'nikdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael becomes this all-important mitzvah that we all know. You can only say Kaddish, you can only say Kedusha, and Kriyas HaTorah and Baruch Hu if you're with Klal Yisrael. And that is one dimension of this pasuk, which is extremely powerful and extremely and very thought-provoking in many ways. That Kedusha is not a personal feeling of sanctity, or if not only a personal feeling of sanctity, but it is something which requires the presence of other people and to interact with Klal Yisrael. So that's one meaning of this pasuk. The other meaning of this pasuk, of course, is an extreme meaning, which is Kiddush Hashem, the idea of a person being able or being willing to sacrifice his life, a type of martyrdom, which we all hope we will never have to face, to give up one's life rather than to desecrate the Shem Hashem. And sadly, throughout Jewish history, untold numbers of Klal Yisrael have given up their lives rather than abandon Judaism, abandon Emunah, abandon the Jewish people, rather than enter into apostasy and convert to another religion. They'd rather give up their life. That is another concept of Kiddush Hashem, of a person valuing his connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to such a degree that he's willing to give up his life for it. And the Gemara speaks, that's a subject for a separate shia. Again, that's the Rambam there in Hilchos Yesod Torah, chapter 5, goes into all the details of it. Under what circumstances, God forbid, is one required to give up one's life rather than transgress the cardinal aveirus of the Torah. I'll call upon him. That's a second level of Kiddush Hashem, but it also is actually connected, sadly, to events that we see in Israel every day, and that is people who give up their lives, the Chayalim and Chayalot, who are willing to, and sadly under certain circumstances actually do give up their lives, rather than allow the enemies of Klal Yisrael to destroy the Jewish people. And that is that is a very powerful aspect of Kiddush Hashem, that a person is willing to give up his life in order to fulfill the mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, not to stand by and see somebody else, other people in Klal Yisrael being killed. That is also a part of Kiddush Hashem, and this is of the highest of the highest significance in the Torah. The willingness of soldiers to really give up their lives in a way which is obvious to them that that's the right thing to do. And to protect Klal Yisrael is something which is of amazing and inspirational to us all. Small anecdote, speaking to an officer, a senior officer, a Mempei, in the tanks division who was in Rafiach in Gaza, and I met him. He's a relative, and I spoke to him about what he's been through recently. He just came out of service. He says we see acts of gevurah, acts of tremendous gevurah every day. So I said, give me an example. So he said to me, a few days ago, we were our division was going through a part of Gaza, and we were caught in an ambush, and there was snipers and crossfire, and it was extremely dangerous. And one of our division was shot in his leg, and he was down, and he was lying down in an exposed area, and within 2 or 3 minutes he would have been dead, because the snipers were all over the place. And so we put up some smoke in order to obscure it, but actually somebody needed to go out and save this guy's life, but no one knew exactly how to do this without themselves getting killed instantly. Suddenly, he said, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this 19-year-old kid, a real Hesder boy, jumped out of his vehicle, ran over to this fella, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy lying on the ground is a big, heavy guy in his mid-30s. He's actually one of the Miluimniks, and he's a family man with a wife and a few children, and he's lying on the ground, and he's down. And what's this little 19-year-old kid who was a smallish guy? What's he going to do? And I saw this kid. He threw himself on the soldier, hugged him very, very tightly, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy doesn't need a hug. He needs to be saved. And then I suddenly realized this little kid had realized that the land on which the guy was lying was on an incline. So he hugged him very tight, and he started rolling with him. He couldn't lift him up, it was too heavy for him, but he rolled with him about 10, 15 yards until he was behind a wall, and that saved him, and that saved his life. We were able to fight off the enemy and save this guy's life. And of course, this kid was bruised and cut in the process of rolling on uneven ground with this very heavy guy with him, but he saved his life. And after I spoke to the kid, and I said, that was tremendous what you did. He says, of course, what are you talking about? He's one of us. But he gave up his life. He was risking his life in a very, very real way. And this is a Kiddush Hashem. Risking one's life for other members of Klal Yisrael is one of the aspects that Chazal understood what this posuk was talking about. So on one level, this posuk is referring to ways of tefillah, to connect ourselves through davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Dvarim Shebekdusha. On another level, it's talking about moments of great dedication and great focus and an understanding that our lives themselves have to be dedicated to the Shem Hashem. But there's another aspect here I must touch upon, which is found in the Nefesh HaChaim of Chaim Volozhin, also mentioned originally by the Maharal, that there's another meaning to the word Chillul Hashem. That it doesn't come from the word chol, doesn't come from the word to desecrate. It comes from the word chalal. And chalal means an empty space. And v'lo techalalu, as Shem Kodshi means, don't live a life of emptiness. Don't live a life which has been emptied out of the divine connection. And this is the sense of emptiness that every person can experience occasionally, where you feel disconnected from a meaning and a purpose in life. And when that happens, we try and distract ourselves, we try to numb ourselves, we try and do all sorts of things to avoid this sense of emptiness. But this emptiness is really the word halal. Halal in modern Hebrew means outer space. Empty space is halal, right? And even a flute is called a chalil because it's an empty, a hollow reed. So the idea of halal, lo techalu Hashem Kodshi, means be careful not to empty out your life from the chibur with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the chibur with Kedusha. The only solution to the emptiness is not diversion, but the solution to emptiness is v'nikdashti b'serch b'nei Yisrael, to reconnect. And there are ways to reconnect. We can reconnect through Torah itself. Torah is always the greatest chibur, the learning of Torah, immersing oneself in the ideas of Torah and the thoughts of Torah and the simcha of Torah. The chibur comes through davening. Chibur comes through connection to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. These are ways to connect to the ultimate purposes the Torah gives us, which are in a sense, the cure to the sense of emptiness and the hollowness, which people sometimes experience if they're not connected in the full way possible. And this is V'lo techalalu Hashem Kodeshi. So here we have a pasuk which operates on so many different levels. On one level it's tefillah, Dvorim shebekdusha, the connection to the minyan. On another level it is the Mesiras Nefesh, of people giving up their lives rather than committing acts against the Torah. And on a third level it's deeply personal. It's not theology. It's about you and me. It's about when we feel a sense of emptiness. The solution is Kedusha, another dose of connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through Torah, Tefillah, through Chesed, and in that way we can connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and v'nikdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael, live a life of Kedusha and know how to be mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, to differentiate between in our lives that which is indeed connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that which takes us further away. And Bez Hashem, we should always live a life of Kedusha with Am Yisrael v'chein Yiratzon.